All right. Hello, everyone. Exciting episode here today. I'm joined with my friend Yanik Constantine, originator of the Phoenix program. We've done two episodes previously, and both of those will be in the description. And today we are going to talk about health gurus and people in the alternative health world who die young. This is a dirty secret in the health business that we do, in fact, also die of things that were supposed to be prevented, right? We're the ones talking about, hey, this is what you do to prevent cancer and heart disease and all this stuff, and yet some of us do die of cancer. It's a weird thing, and we're going to investigate a couple of these cases, especially looking at Andrew W. Saul, who's a pretty famous author. I've read one of his books about omega-3. It was very good, and we might have thought that he would have lived longer, but he did not. So we're going to talk about him. And I just want to put out there, we don't mean any disrespect by looking into deaths or anything, but this is obviously very important. There's a lot of people where it's pretty easy to see, okay, well, obviously they died young. They had bad habits and all this stuff. But when these are people who claim to have good habits themselves and also are teaching and telling other people how to eat and how to supplement and all this stuff, it's a pretty big problem if they don't make it to even the average life expectancy in America.
Right.
So, Yannick, you have been wanting to do this episode for a while. What makes you interested specifically in Andrew Saul?
Well, what makes me interested in him as well as others is, the approach he took, the books I've read. He has really good books. The Truth About Niacin being one of them. Really, really interesting book. He was shedding light on a series of different topics, right? But then if he was having all these answers, why would he die so early? You know, it was, how old was he? 70 years old? I think he
It
was
was
70, right?
it was 2 days before his 69th birthday.
Oh my God. Well, then, yeah, I mean, he didn't do much better than an average doctor, right? As in lifespan terms.
And the average
So,
person, the average American right now, today, will expect to be living 76 and a third year. So didn't even make it to the average cheeseburger eating, beer drinking American.
right, right. But if we're also comparing, these different methods called so-called alternative, which is the predominant method for so long, right? Before the allopathic medicine, then what's going on? If we can't live beyond what they're living, then why would we buy this option? Why would we buy into it, right? Why would we practice it? So Andrew Saul, I have a lot of respect for him. He has the Vitamin movie, which is also, it helps you see things in a different way. But I was very, very intrigued on how he would promote, um, he was a vegetarian, right? And he would juice a lot. So, and he would do mega dosing of vitamin C every single day. So this kind of sheds light into the, okay, should you be mega dosing all the time, nonstop, and just going at it? I mean, he had his white hair, right? Very clearly, since he was way younger. So why was it so white? So he was getting it from different sources. So maybe, not looking at it as in a critique of, okay, he's doing this bad, or I mean, we can take his life as type of anecdotal evidence, right, of what may work and why not, what may not work. So that's why I'm really interested in Andrew, because he had really good tips, but in other aspects, well, we just saw the evidence. He didn't live longer. So
Do,
that's really, what gives it away in a certain way.
do you know his cause of death? I couldn't find it.
I don't know. I don't know, but um, I couldn't find any of it truly. But in any case, it didn't seem to be an accident or something, like
Oh,
of
they'd
that
tell
sort.
you. They'd tell you he died in a plane
Yeah.
crash. He died on his motorcycle, but they don't tell you when it's cancer or heart disease. It's very annoying, actually. I just got another email like 5 minutes before we hopped on here, Yannick.
Yeah.
It's from the International Society for Orthomolecular Medicine.
Hmm.
Orthomolecular means treating with nutrients. And I subscribe to this, and here it is. A memorandum of Michael J. Gonzalez. He's got at least three advanced degrees, is a naturopath, a doctor of science, and a PhD. Got doctorates in here in nutritional medicine, health sciences, nutritional biochemistry, and cancer biology. Several academic positions. He was a consultant for the national basketball team in Puerto Rico, and yet he just died at 63 years old. And
Mm.
again, cause of death is not listed. So I suspect whenever it's not listed, it's either cancer or a heart attack.
Yeah, or something natural, right? They just didn't look into it, but he just didn't wake up or something happened.
Hmm.
So So yeah, I mean, Andrew, a very clear example of, well, it's very visible. The megadosing of vitamin C, the white hair, the copper deficiencies, going vegetarian, not being able to access, those essentials, as much iron or copper. Because I think he did eat eggs, for example. So I'm not sure if he was an ovo lacto vegetarian. I'm not really sure about that, but at the least, you know that the further you go into that direction, the more problems you have as into access for nutrients. And if you're already having issues with accessing copper, for example, and you're megadosing with 12 grams of vitamin C or more daily, well, you know, it's just pretty much a no-brainer in my way of viewing things that you're tilting, the pendulum way too far in the antioxidant and this other aspect, and kind of like because the orthomolecular focuses more on vitamins, they don't focus as much on minerals. I don't know if you've noticed that, but metals and minerals, it's not like their key thing. They're more focused on clinical megadosing of certain vitamins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to jump into that. I just want to correct myself here. I said I read his omega-3 book. I was confused. That's a different book, different author. It's the Vitamin C, The Real Story is the book of
Hmm.
his that I read. And I've got the niacin in my wish list there, but I didn't buy it. I might have read one of these the Vitamin Cures where he's a co-author as well. But yeah, I was just thinking you're saying he's a vegetarian, and I'm like, didn't he write a book on omegas? But no, that was a different book. He wrote
Hmm.
on vitamin C. And yeah, I agree with you. The orthomolecular people, since the beginning of orthomolecular medicine, have always been more focused on vitamins, specifically in super high doses of vitamins, which does need to be balanced with minerals. But you've said this before. You're saying that high doses of vitamin C sustained over a long period will deplete minerals.
Right, right. Mostly copper. So yeah, you need it in a certain amount, and you can use copper, right, for connective tissue and everything. But if you have it at those amounts, I mean, it is when in the world would we be able to access mega doses of vitamin C under natural conditions, right? So I'm certified in orthomolecular medicine as well. I mean, I understand all the approach, but I also have these other perspectives to help me like view it not just in the molecule, but also in evolutionary terms, right? Behavioral biology is like, okay, well, would we ever be able to access those amounts of vitamin C? How many oranges would you need to eat? You wouldn't be able to get it like from the Inuits from organ meats or like the fat from the animals that they're consuming. There's just no way. Same goes for seed oils. How would you be able to access those amounts of seed oils? It would be completely impossible, right? Even if you were to eat that amount, like huge amounts of seeds, which would be very detrimental. I mean, how could you do it? It's just impossible. So can we do it for clinical benefits to, like kind of like pickle, or do it for maybe a year, 2 years? Probably. Yeah. For most cases, I'd say 90% or more. But on the long term, I mean, does it really tax your health longevity wise? I would say yes. So Andrew Saul would be an example. I remember the juicing, but he would also go into, he has a good book about juicing actually. It's very informative, but he doesn't really go into the oxalic acid and all these other types of acids found in plants that also impact us. So I believe he was more biased into the plant-based or plant-inclined type of diet, and too much on vitamins, and kind of lost perspective there. That's just my personal take. I've seen his conferences, videos, books. I really admire a lot of his work, but I mean, we have to look at the whole picture, right? And also, we can use his the way that he did things and see how far he got. So in the niacin book, the truth about niacin, he has another mentor, which is called Dr. Abram Hoffer. And that person did live to be, I think he was like 93 years old, something like that. And he would megadose vitamin B3 and focused on schizophrenia and other topics, right? But then you kind of see like, okay, well, this is another health guru. He got farther, and he was in a clinical practice and he did a bunch of things, right? You see someone else that just died, Derek Lonsdale. He's also, I think he has a couple of papers in the Orthomolecular Journal, and he focuses particularly on megadosing vitamin B1 in different forms. And I think he got to be 100 years old or 2 days before he was 100 years old, something like that. So that also kind of tells you like, okay, maybe it's not just the vitamin, because Andrew would focus on vitamin B3, but vitamin C, and also this approach is plant-based. But these other authors and clinical practitioners and health gurus and you name it, well, they probably had a little bit more, they were onto something. Another type of vitamin that probably had more of an impact. I'm interested also in their lifestyle, but you can't find that stuff. It's only just like, okay, they wrote about this, yeah, but what did they eat? What was their lifestyle? No, it's not just nutrients, but nutrients wise, it seems to be the ones that go more as in B vitamins. They have a little bit more benefits. C megadose and not megadosing vitamin C, how long can you do it? Even vitamin B1 or B6, right? So you start like going into these questions and looking at the person, not just the idea. Because the idea, well, it only took them so far, but it took others farther. So that's kind of my take on what's going on and what to like kind of question and pay attention to our own health gurus. Because I also part of my formation was reading his books, but at the end of the day, he didn't live that long. So I don't know what you think about that.
Well, you mentioned Hoffer. Hoffer's one of the OGs. He's one of the originators of orthomolecular medicine, and he did live to 91. I just checked that. And as far as megadosing vitamin C, Linus Pauling is of course the guru for that. Two-time Nobel Pri- Two-time Nobel Prize winner. He lived to 93, which is one of the highest. I know you just mentioned someone else who made it close to 100. I don't know him. I'll look him up in a second. But
Mhm.
Pauling, he did pretty well. 93 is pretty well. He was also born in 1901. So by the time he started to get into vitamin C and stuff, he was later in life, basically. And he was born in Portland, Oregon. So he probably did have electricity back then. But we know part of Dr. Wallach's message is the industrialization of food and all this stuff. And early 1900s, they were less likely to have electricity. And if they did have electricity, they might still have been using wood stoves and still been using wood ashes. We don't know. We don't get all the details of their life unless you read their biographies and stuff. And this is a bit more off the cuff here, but being born back in 1901 gives him a little bit of an edge, in my opinion, than Saul, who was born in 1955. So just several more decades of industrialized food and living in the modern world, basically. I think that helped him out a little bit. But even Wallach kind of somewhat slanders Linus Pauling when he says, yeah, he almost made it, right? Because we take
Mhm.
100 as our benchmark. He almost made it, but
Yeah.
he did a lot better than a lot of these other people. And you mentioned doctors earlier. Now, we all know Dr. Wallach. He's always talked about how doctors only live to 56, and then they reran the study, and well, he did it at 58 and then they reran it and it came to 56. That was on a random selection of obituaries in a medical journal. But there's been a lot of other studies. I'm not going to go through all of them. The very first thing that came up on Google was that primary care physicians have the highest average death rate of all physicians at 80.3 years old. So they live 4 years longer than the average person in America. And I'm just going to take this at face value. There's all kinds of people who have come up with all kinds of different numbers, but for a regular primary care doctor to live to 80, that's pretty good. Emergency medical physicians, apparently here, again, first thing on Google,
Hmm.
have the lowest at 58 years old. So close to what Dr. Wallach has been saying for 30 years. But yeah, a lot of these people we're talking about here today didn't even make it to what a doctor lives, let alone what an average person lives. So yeah, that's really not good. And I wish we did have more information on their actual lifestyle because you're saying it's not just what they supplement with, it's who they are, what they do. Do they exercise? Do they go to sleep at a reasonable hour? Are they work obsessed? Are they a workaholic and they're up typing these books out until 3 in the morning and then waking up at 5 in the morning and going for a jog? Like these
Right,
types of
right.
things matter.
And to my knowledge, Linus Pauling was not by any means plant-based or going towards the plant-based diet.
No, I don't think so.
So in that aspect, well, no. Also, if they're capable of getting two Nobel Prize winnings, well, for example, one of them I think was in peace. So I mean, he was a biochemical genius, of course, but it's because when you look into the Nobel Prizes, which types of Nobel Prizes did he have? And something that you can see, for example, is also, the brain power. So it takes a lot of nutrients also to really be able to build that up. And you can see that in behavioral biology when they're taking all these different animals and birds and, like their brain stuff and their nutrients and what really gets them farther into more complex thinking, because it takes a lot of energy to really be thinking, right? Desmond Morris, he wrote the Naked Ape, and it was a great book, fantastic, really for layman being able to understand all that. I think it should be like a basic book to read to understand behavior, but it also goes into like these different aspects, right? And I think he's going for 100 too. He's still alive, right? And he is not supplementing. He is not, to my knowledge, he really never focused on that part. Actually, when he wrote those books, going into molecules and chemistry and biochemistry was still too new. So you really had to rely a little bit more on comparing anatomy and biology and evolution, but not that, like zooming in so much. So
And yeah, he's still alive, by the way. Desmond Morris is 96 right now.
96. I mean, no mega dosing, no nothing, right? So, where do they, what's giving them their lifespan? So definitely it's not necessarily mega dosing. So it's kind of like trying to, I think my idea here is a little bit to try and like separate a clinical practice of trying to get someone back on track, trying to compensate for long-term deficiencies, lifestyle habits that have drained, and get them back on track. But for how long should you be doing, a certain nutrient? In an amount, in a certain settings, how long should we be doing this stuff? Is it just a lifelong go and get as much as you can, or should you like cycle in, cycle out, kind of like take take it easy in these aspects? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, you've mentioned cycling before, and I don't know exactly where I stand on this, but I do know that over the years I have decreased doses in general. Like I like to start especially with a nice strong dose, especially of the minerals. And we do have reasonably high doses of the B vitamins, but we have very modest doses of vitamin C. That seems to be a big one that people super overdo it. And like you mentioned, it's just not possible to consume that much. And since most animals actually do make their own vitamin C in their body, we can also compare what they do, even though, the lifespan of a chicken is not impressive. I do believe
Right.
off the top of my head, it's only equivalent to like 1 or 2 grams for a human. I think it's not 9 grams, I mean, it's not 20 grams. It's not a mega dose. They create a reasonable dose. And when I
Right.
use megadoses, I have been using megadoses of vitamin C with some people in some cases for the past year or so. And it's short term. It's a temporary thing. This is not a year. This is like a month, maybe a month if necessary. But it's more like a week for a lot of people. We want to flush the system out. I want to see how much you can take. Maybe it indicates a liver problem or something like that. These are people who are not responding to moderate doses, which what we normally do. The only things we really are very serious about getting a lot of are the calcium, absorbable calcium and its cofactors, omega-3 to make up for the abundance of omega-6 in our diet,
Right.
and B12 is quite a high dose compared to the RDA, but I think it's 1,000 micrograms is our dose, which is a
You
very
know, the
high.
RDA, you
Yeah,
know.
the RDA is too low. So it looks
Yeah.
huge. It's like tens of thousands of times the RDA, what we
Right.
use, but it's still a very moderate dose to me. And yeah, there's other mega doses that are possible, niacin, thiamine. I just don't use them very often.
Right. Right. And for example, another question that came to mind right now that you were mentioning was like, okay, so Andrew Saw probably started megadosing much younger than Linus Pauling with all his research and getting to that point and starting with megadosing. He had cancer. I think he died of cancer, if I'm not mistaken. But he
Linus
was
Pauling?
also, yeah,
Yeah.
he was also trying to like use the vitamin C megadosing to like slow down cancer. It probably worked, but it didn't solve the problem, right? And by any means, I don't think he started when he was 30s megadosing, right, or even 40s. He started developing that much later in life, which gives him also the opportunity to not deplete other essential minerals like copper, because he didn't do it for that long. That's just like an idea, just thinking about it. He did have an edge because he was born earlier, but the other aspect is also like, okay, well, if he's megadosing, when did he really start? Because I know Andrew Saul, he did it much younger, right? Um, he was under Hoffer's wing probably in his 20s, 30s, something like that. So when do people really start this and try it out, and how long do they live? So I think that also has to do with this question of the, because we're kind of like looking at the principles behind what they're saying, what they're preaching, what they're doing, and is it consistent with giving you more life? It will probably give you, for example, less, you get sick less, and other options just because of the antioxidant activity and everything else. But long term, really not a good benchmark. So again, it comes down to cycling in into doing something, cycling out, just like the seasons, just like this rhythmic, like the circadian rhythm, the circadian rhythm, all these different physiological rhythms we have. I think we have enough vitamin C in general. Well, under natural conditions, we're not under natural conditions anymore, right? But before, under natural conditions, you had two sources of vitamin C. One would have been fruit, citrus fruit, particularly had a lot of vitamin C, but also from animal fat, right? From the liver, from the spleen, particularly,
The adrenals.
um, the adrenals. So you would get, for example, chicken liver right now, it'll give you about 33 milligrams of vitamin C. So if you consider that, and also just from gathering fruit, it wasn't like really something difficult to sustain in a way, right? Um, but by no means would you even get to like 2 grams. I don't think it would even be possible, in a daily basis.
Maybe
10,000
sometimes when
years ago.
the lime tree is in bloom.
Right, right. But sometimes, you
Or
know,
yeah, caribou adrenals or something like that. But yeah, it's not every day.
and you wouldn't eat an entire caribou, right? You would eat like a chunk of it. Maybe who would get the privilege and would start with the heart and the blood, and because you can't eat. I mean, we're a group species, right? Because we would go hunting, and we would take turns, and we would, between everyone, would eat the entire animal. So one of the key points of today is like everyone's just going for lean mass and muscle meat, and they're forgetting about all the organs and forgetting about the bone and everything else. But in those times, even if you were to eat the animal, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to get this time, right? But if you would like rotate, cycle, and sometimes somebody would get the spleen, someone would get, the thyroid and the heart, and then it kind of would compensate, right? Probably the most skillful hunters would get the most nutritious parts. They would be rewarded with it in their own tribe, right? And that would lead into higher performance and continue because we're social after all. So it would be in benefit of the entire tribe. But those leaders and those humans that would do that, they would have like this. Um, they would require continued high output, right, of doing things of physiology, which is, if we're talking about vitamins, we're talking about metabolism and physiology. We're talking about minerals and metals, we're talking about the same thing. So the high concentration one would go as the prize for the leaders, or the ones that would carry out like this certain task, right, and be able to provide, so in that aspect, in any case, we would probably have enough very bioavailable. We would probably not be able to hunt every day, have access to animals every day. That's why we're omnivores. Um, but high doses, I don't think so. And where the cycling in and cycling out comes out, cycling out of eating and not eating, fasting and eating, and having all these other metabolic pathways is like, okay, so we don't necessarily always have to have these super high nutrient intakes. I don't think so. I think sometimes by not having it, or some nutrients that don't avoid like fasting, then you can rebuild and get rid of parts that are old. This is like a genetic component that's been carried on since yeast. So it's very significant for continuing living and even living longer. So that's where megadosing and also the nutrient part, I believe, is strongly contrasted by stopping at times. And that's where fasting comes in, right? And not just saying like, okay, megadose with 24 grams of vitamin C every single day. It just doesn't make sense in that aspect to me.
No, it doesn't make sense. And I do want to throw on the table that it's not clear that the hunter-gatherer lifestyle is optimal either. The longest lived populations are agricultural societies, small agricultural societies that happen to live in places with a bunch of minerals there. But they also don't have an abundance of food either. Most of them live in mountainous regions. The Hunza people, the Azerbaijanis, people up on Lake Titicaca, and there's a few, Vilcabamba, all high elevation people that don't have a huge abundance of food available. Things are pretty tight, but they do have lots of minerals. But yeah, you're talking about vitamin C specifically. They definitely don't have mega doses of vitamin C. Definitely do
Yeah.
not.
No
And
mega doses of thiamine either, right?
yeah, unless,
Or even
the
a B
one person who
complex.
gets to eat the adrenals that day is going to get a mega dose that day, but it's not year round or anything like that by any means. And by the way, yeah, Linus Pauling did have prostate cancer and he did do surgery and some other things. The internet's not very clear here. Did some other treatments and it spread to his liver and he died. So prostate cancer doesn't have that much to do with vitamin C. Anyways, I would put that more in the probiotic category. You need good probiotics, you need good digestion. And even I've read recently that caffeine, if you quit caffeine, it can take away the inflammation in the prostate. So
Oh yeah. Yeah,
who knows?
yeah. It's not have as much potassium, right? But when it comes to prostate, it's probably iodine. Iodine is one of the key solutions there, because and it goes hand in hand with the caffeine, right? Because then you start having too much potassium, and then the cells sweat it, and just like in the mammary glands with a woman that they take the high doses of iodine and iodide, and the iodine goes takes the potassium, gets it out of the body. So it seems that for prostate, he was just looking at the wrong nutrient, right? I mean, he was the pioneers. He was starting everything. So I mean, that's fantastic. But in another aspect, it's like the again, this one single take on one vitamin or mineral to do everything is not really looking at the complete picture. It's like it's a team game. You can't just go for one.
Well, this is making me feel good about our message in general, which is not to focus too deeply on any one nutrient. In fact, people get mad at us because Wallach, years ago, decades ago, he stopped calling out the one nutrient as much as possible. He would
Oh
say,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I noticed this changed. Yeah.
yeah, this one problem, it's kind of just a single nutrient deficiency, and the comments are full. What's the deficiency? Tell me the deficiency. You guys are clickbaiting me. Why are you telling me this and then not telling me the deficiency? Because if you just go out and buy selenium, you're probably wasting your time and money and you're missing the picture. You got to see the
Right,
forest instead of the trees here. The forest is that there's
right.
lots of nutrients and they all work together, and we can boost some of them in some circumstances, and it shouldn't be, doesn't need to be long term. So I've got some other people here. I compiled a little list of people who lived
Oh, okay, that's great. Let's see.
or how long they lived, people in the business. One of them, one of the OGs as well, Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne, a fitness originator.
Oh,
They credit Jack LaLanne with the reason why there's gyms everywhere.
right.
He lived to 96.
Hmm,
I know you mentioned that other
interesting.
guy that made it to 100. We're going to look at him. What was his
Yeah,
name again?
I was talking about vitamin B1. So Derek Lonsdale.
Derek Lonsdale.
Yep. He just died like a month ago.
Okay, we'll look at him in a second. But Jack LaLanne, born in 1914, lived in 96. He was born in San Francisco, so they probably had electricity in 1914. He said he ate junk food for the first 15 years of his life, which it's probably not as bad as we have it today, but
Definitely, yeah.
he was a sugaraholic, he said. And then yeah, he became this fitness guy, fitness guru. He did supplements. Details are a little bit vague. I didn't have time to read his whole life story, but there's at least a few
Hmm.
references to him talking about supplementing. So he wasn't pure, all natural, wasn't a raw food guy or anything like that. He was big on juicing, right? Big on juicing, and he was big on fitness. And I think that might be one of the deciding factors here. I know Dr. Wallach is always talking about people who die young from just focusing on fitness, but
Right.
I do think fitness is part of the picture here. We do need to move, and it's very easy. And especially, this is basically an academic job, being a nutritionist, being a health guru. You're doing a lot of sitting, you're doing a lot of
Yeah.
phone calls. You can easily become a sedentary lifestyle. And I do think that fitness is part of this, as well as eating well and supplementing and having
Right.
good
It's just not one
sleep.
thing, right?
Yeah, it's not one thing. And yeah, Jack LaLanne, he was not a vegetarian. He ate eggs, broth. He did have oatmeal and soy milk. I'm not sure why he thought soy milk was a good idea, but he didn't like dairy. He was dairy free mostly, ate a lot of fruits and vegetables, loved juicing, but he also ate a lot of egg whites specifically and fish and took supplements.
How
So
when was he born?
1914.
Okay, okay. That is also a key point, right?
Hmm.
So again, the food wasn't the same back then, but also juicing had a more profound impact than it does now, because you will not find the same amount of iron, for example, in an apple back then than you do now. You would have to have like consume like 18 apples, 36, impossible. Even through juicing, you would have to get that amount just to get to those amounts of minerals. So in a certain way, he was really heavily supplementing through juicing, through the extraction method in those times. Who knows which vegetables he used, right? But at the end of the day, it worked for him.
Well, probably a lot of them. And here on Wikipedia, it does say that he did use wheat germ as well. Wheat germ, high vitamin
Wheat
E.
germ.
Vitamin
Hmm.
E might be one of the most underrated nutrients,
I
even
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
even in our camp. And a lot of us who go healthy and stop eating gluten and grains and stuff, where the heck are you getting enough vitamin E? Right? So
Right. Yeah.
wheat germ, okay. Brewer's yeast, okay. B vitamins, awesome. Chromium, bone meal.
Really
Like
good
this
stuff.
guy did pretty good for being in the early days of this too. He did pretty good. Something says here 100 liver yeast tablets. I don't know what that means, but sounds like it could be good if it's based on liver. He was a
Yeah,
mega
so
doser here, 15,000 milligrams of vitamin C, 15 grams. That's a mega dose.
that
Plus,
is a megadose.
plus
Yeah.
juicing. 2,000 units of B. I don't know what that means. What B? All of them? Each one of them? 2,000 is pretty high. And what is a unit? I don't know. Some boron and some zinc, and also 75 alfalfa and kelp tablets. Did he do that every day? 75 alfalfa and kelp tablets. So I'm under the impression that we can't digest alfalfa. Maybe he's talking about alfalfa sprouts. It is high calcium, but we do use it for livestock animals because I don't think we can digest it unless it's sprouts.
Right,
And
right.
then kelp is very good. Seaweed, iodine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he really had a complete, source of it. I don't know for how long he was doing the 15 grams of vitamin C, but in any case, I mean, he did have a really, really broad source of high density supplementation. And he did start off with way better. I mean, it's not the same when you're developing and you're soaking up all those nutrients in your cells and bones and everywhere. And you have those stores for a long time as to when you were born and didn't have access to that and you suffer just like you did, I did, many of our generation. We just didn't have that chance anymore. So I think they could have a little bit more room for trial and error than we do now. And but it seems like, I mean, he was doing fitness, he was moving around, that was good. But how long was he? Like a marathon runner? Was he a triathlon runner or something
He
like
was a
that?
weightlifter.
Oh, okay, that changes it. It's not the same endurance athletes, veteran runners, than it is weightlifting. So weightlifting, you soak up a lot of all those nutrients and it goes into your skeletal muscle, right? And your bone also benefits from that, as opposed to running where you're lowering your cardiovascular, you're wearing it out, your cardiovascular system, heart, arteries, all this part. You're oxidizing your heart really strongly. But with weightlifting, I mean, was he a bodybuilder or was he just like
He was like the originator of the whole gym movement.
okay, so but not a bodybuilder, not the big type of
No,
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
he was more fitness. He was
Okay,
fit muscular, not freak muscular.
okay. So, well, being a man, with the role in complex anatomy and everything, well, we were made to like being carrying more stuff, like going against gravity, not just running and sprinting. We can't outrun anything. That's why we're a group animal, right? Um, but that makes more sense. And that is very different than getting on a treadmill or on the bicycle or doing something like that, or triathlons where you're just wearing yourself out. So it is another type. And also the intensity of it, he was probably within the 3 to 6 range, metabolic range, as in it wasn't that much performance, that much strainage. So knowing this guy actually has a lot of components to his lifestyle, which is really good and a lot more information than the other ones, right?
Mhm.
Um, but definitely exercise, just as exercise and the word fitness kind of becomes confusing, because exercise, I mean, if you're really cleaning the house, it can be really good exercise, it can be called that, but it's all just physical activity. So how much are you draining yourself?
And we actually have his cause of death here. He died from respiratory failure due to pneumonia. And
Mhm.
his family said he had been sick for a week but refused to see a doctor. And he had been performing his daily workout routine the day before his death. So, yeah, with pneumonia, could have had some things missing. Do you think maybe his immune system could have even been taxed by the excess vitamin C?
I think it could have been taxed more through the gym than from vitamin C, because they've also had deficiencies caused, by too much vitamin C or metabolic impediments. But I would go a little bit more. This is all just we're just assuming here, but going into the depending on how much he would do exercise as well. Because if he was doing it 5 times, 6 days, 7 days a week, there's something that is impacted in your body. You lose a lot of fat, right? So you have a lot of of lean mass, muscle mass. But when you get sick and you don't have that constant flow of energy, then you start having issues. And there is something else known about like weightlifting. You can have low peaks of blood glucose. So if you have low peaks, and vitamin C does help bring down, like fat and liver, and it does start like impacting. Then you'll have low peaks, and then you get high inflammation. So you get low peaks of glucose, and then you get high peaks, and both peaks will give you a lot more inflammation. And weightlifting is known for that because your muscle is soaking up with all that glucose in your blood. So,
And this is
in
why they
either
say
case,
weightlifting
he
helps with
lived long.
diabetes.
I mean, much longer.
This is
Right.
why,
Right.
yeah.
That's the main reason.
Yeah, well, he
But
did
that's a
good.
really good example. Yeah, he
Yeah,
did good.
he did pretty good. I've got some other ones here. Robert Atkins, very famous for the Atkins diet. He died at
Yeah.
72.
Okay. Yeah, not much of an achievement longevity wise there.
No, not much of an achievement at all. And he was kind of the original of the keto diet. This is like the proto keto diet.
Hmm.
Yet it was not very big on supplements, as far as I know. I'm not an expert on the Atkins diet here. It's a little bit before my time. Let's type that in here.
They usually don't go pro vitamins or pro supplements.
Get everything from food, right?
Yeah, the carnivore movement, which is becoming a type of fad now, just pure carnivore, is also like going into the direction. I've heard a lot of the new like gurus coming out there, like, oh no, you can get everything just from food, and you don't need any supplements. So it's like doesn't matter. They just focus on the just do this and don't think about anything else.
Well, he
Just eat
did
meat.
recommend apparently, and I read one of Atkins' books. It was just a very long time ago. I can't remember. He did
Mhm.
recommend B vitamins here, according to Nutri-Align. This is the Atkins diet, multivitamins, and Atkins Basic 3 formula. He's got B vitamins, vitamin C, and chromium or green tea is on here as well. Chromium's good, but it's one of at least 60 essential
Right.
minerals. Has lots of cofactors. So he talked. He said the big three here, but there's more: magnesium, potassium, sodium. I mean, these are great, but it just doesn't look like this was properly integrated into the message.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. I've had the reference several times in, writings and different authors, but never talking about the supplementation.
Yeah, it was mostly about the carb cutting. So in,
Hmm.
in your opinion, what nutrients would be taxed the most on the keto diet or the Atkins diet?
Well, if he was truly cycling in or out, I mean, for starters, he did recommend the B vitamins, but not the minerals, right? So then you have the coenzymes, but you don't have the enzymes. So you don't have the essentials for the enzymes and just the coenzymes. And then you start having going into this like metabolic loop where you start draining a lot of minerals. That's one of them. If he was focused, I believe he was more focused on the meat eating and also fats, which is better and less carbohydrates. But if you consider that, then you also start going into the um, low acidic state, right? And then you start missing a lot out of, you don't get enough calcium as well, right? So supplementation in that case of calcium citrate would have probably been optimal because that way you get the calcium and you also neutralize a lot of the acid from the animal based components that you're eating, the amino acids. So that would be one. And well, he was just missing out on, in general, I'd say minerals. Minerals a big one, and types of fruit because carbohydrates. Just about thinking carbohydrates doesn't. We don't eat carbohydrates, do we? So we eat food and then we find some components or forms that are missing there. Without it, we die. And if we have higher amounts of it, then we have these medicine-like properties, which would be megadosing, right? But in that case, there's a lot of missing pieces. And it, like you said, it doesn't seem to be like really well structured or integrated. It was the first approach. I think it was good. It's kind of like changing the vision of just eat a lot of carbohydrates, but not cycling into carbohydrates to oxidize is also another of the components. Because if you go more for the um, fats and animal protein continuously, then eventually you'll start going into this acidic part. Cells don't breathe as well. You don't get as much energy. You start taking it out of the bone. You start getting glutamine from the muscles, and this on the long term, it starts impacting. So calcium would probably be number one in a form of calcium citrate, or even just in those times thinking, okay, let's get some calcium and let's also get some um like mineral water. The how do you call it? The bubbly water, the sparkling water, seltzer water. That would also could have helped with the bicarbonates. So I think those are some of the issues with Atkins. So again, you go into this, start this and never stop. No cycling, right? Don't go for the carbohydrates. Just don't go for it because your body can sustain it. I think Wallach started going a little bit into that direction, and it was like, yeah, we don't require carbohydrates. However, our body is telling us something different. So our body is telling us, okay, so there are these pathways where sugary foods, sweet foods are highly prized. In the nucleus accumbens, it's like the reward center. It's just brights up, and it's telling us in your environment, when you find this, go for it. And you're even taxing your energy at that moment for getting, a little bit low energy and storing it as fat for later use. So when we just go into the pure, yeah, you never need carbohydrates when they're all around there. And also, for example, oranges, they'll have citric acid, right? So they're going to help in that part. It's never just vitamin C. It's a complex of different, it'll have different antioxidants. And that's where you also get this good rate of nutrients versus calories. I don't like the calorie approach, but then you think like, okay, they're not, for most people that don't understand that, let's just say they're not empty calories. They can sustain their all metabolic weight and price for being used, you know? Um, so I think that those are the downfalls, just some that come to mind in the Atkins side of how you're describing them.
I would agree too. I would put calcium at the very, very top of the list because meat and dairy and many of the fats that people are using for the keto diet are high phosphorus, so that taxes your calcium big time. I would disagree about the calcium citrate, but we're allowed to disagree. I would put tricalcium phosphate at the top of the list in the form of bone meal, if that's all you got. But high
Right.
doses nonetheless. In whatever form it was, they would need high doses to make up for all that phosphorus. And yeah, that would be the biggest problem with the Atkins diet to me. I did want to mention that we were talking about Jack LaLanne earlier, and just to finish him off, he was a disciple of Paul Bragg.
Hmm.
Paul Bragg, I'm not sure if he started the Bragg's company or his son did. I think he did. I think he did. But Bragg made it to 81. So he didn't do as well. Jack LaLanne took up his torch, and I think he added the fitness component big time and lived longer than him. Yeah, Paul Bragg is pretty famous as well. And his son didn't live that long either. I'll look him up.
Well, the fitness part, I mean, it is really important. We're supposed to move, right? But how long are we really supposed to move for that long? Are we really supposed to be at the gym when we're 90? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think we should be doing things, but if we look at ourselves beyond just the individual human body, but as a tribal community, I mean, what would you say is the high older would bring as opposed to just like going out and hunting? Because I mean, would someone that's older really be that good at hunting when his body doesn't, give that much output? It doesn't matter if right here he knows what to do. Can his body carry that out? What would you say would be the value in a tribe of having someone that's older? Would it really be the body mass?
No, it wouldn't be the body mass, it'd be their wisdom and helping around camp and stuff like that, right? The older people would be working in the kitchens more and stuff. Again, I lean more towards the agricultural societies, at least in my own research too. The hunter-gatherer model is very limited to me, and it's been debated on how long they live and stuff. You got to factor in predation and violence, whereas these small, because like 25% of hunter-gatherers, at least the males, they die from violence, right? It's the most
Right,
violent form of
right.
society. So it's a bit difficult to tell what's going on. And these small agricultural societies, they're the ones that are known as the blue zones. And it's just easier to see how the work would be divided up, especially an older person, and having the value of an older person in your agricultural camp rather than your hunter-gatherer camp, because in the hunter-gatherer camp, there isn't that much. Your wisdom is not going to
I
go
don't
that
think it's
far.
optimal. Yeah, I don't want to like confuse anyone and say like, okay, hunter gatherer would be optical in length, in life wise, in lifespan. I don't think so. I don't think so either, right? Because you have more access. That's why the agricultural side was useful, because you would have a downfall as in skeleton structure. Your teeth would get crooked with all the grains and cereals and everything, but you would have abundance in food, continuously. But that also comes with a price, right? I always like to say, well, there's no yin without a yang, right? So where's the other side of it? Well, the other side of having all those nutrients is then you don't have that much of the role playing social aspect, those different aspects which make us human, which we do have the capacity to live for a long time, of course, but a lot of other things fall down. So right now, people can get old, but they're not wise enough. They're repeating, or they can't access the memory and their experience. So wisdom just kind of like falling out. So younger people like us, we're like looking at the gurus, right? They're dying earlier, many of them. Others, experience wise, well, we're not even in contact with them. We're not in the same like place, physical place. So they can like say, oh, well, when this happened when I was young and the weather was this way, I did this. And then you have another option, which you've never thought about. So going back to the fitness aspect, which is why I started talking about wisdom, which I completely agree with you is the high prize of the older. Um, well, are we supposed to be doing that much when we're older? Or are we supposed to really use more of our life experience and even feel the reward of being able to, give someone another option, or I don't think we're supposed to be going to the gym when we're 96, even though he lived longer. I just don't think so. It doesn't make sense. If you're just moving around, doing some stuff, that's good. I mean, go
Doing
out
some
for
walking,
walks.
yeah, do some
Yeah.
gardening,
Yeah, yeah,
some
more
cooking,
in align with your anatomy at that moment, right? Because
some
you're
lawn
not
bowling.
right, right. But you're not going to be going against someone that in his 20s or 30s. You are not going to win that way, and you don't have to, because we're not supposed to be competing with each other in those ages. So fit for what would be my question. And so I think the fitness concept has been it's been confusing. It's just like, do this because just run and just, yeah, for how long? Why? Why should we be doing that it just doesn't make sense. Would women be doing that? If they're taking care of the nest and the children and organizing society, I mean, would they be going out there and lifting weights? It just doesn't make any sense. And they have more fat for a reason. Men don't. But then they lose all the fat, just like this other. If you're in fitness, then you're gonna lose all those reserves in case there's an emergency, like pneumonia or what. What did the other health guru have?
Which one?
The one you mentioned, the one that died when he was going to the fitness guru,
Yeah, he died of pneumonia. Jack LaLanne.
pneumonia, right? So then you don't have like this reserve in case something like that happens. So so that's kind of like my take. Like, when should you be doing these things, or why so much intensity?
And everyone should remember that women live longer than men in every country,
Oh
period.
yeah,
Right there, they
yeah,
live longer than us. That's partially because men are dumber. We
Hunger.
men play with guns and dirt bikes, and we do dangerous stuff, and are more likely to take risks and all this stuff. That's a big part of the reason that we do die younger, but this could be part of it as well. We take the fitness a lot further in general, and whereas women naturally have a higher body fat and a less intense physical lifestyle in most societies all the way through history, except for the modern fitness woman. This is the first time this has ever existed. Everywhere else, every other country, every other
Yeah.
society, the women have it physically easier. Doesn't mean time easier, right? A lot of people say, well, the women do actually more work in a hunter-gatherer situation because they have more to do. That you can gather frequently, whereas you can sit around hunting all day, every day, and still not catch everything, still not catch something every day. Just saying, it's not like they're sitting around. They do a lot, but they don't do as much physical, hard
Intensity, right?
intensity. Yeah.
Yeah, so not that much performance required in that aspect. A lot more complex, definitely. Us men, more simple-minded, you do this, you call out for the animal, then he'll chase you, and then you throw something at him, just one task, one really focused task. Women doing so many tasks to have everything in place in the nest. So very, very different, but not physically so demanding. Hence, women shorter, you know, their fingers so thin as opposed to men, for all those specific detail oriented tasks. So we are different. Why are we trying to do the same things? you know
Yep.
it's like even in preference in work, women like more the social aspect, right? That's what they would do, and men, we would go more for the risk taking and just go out there and get hurt, and we are more expendable, and we would have been more expendable in those times as well. Losing one woman would have been way worse, or two or three, it would have been devastating. Losing two or three men, not that much of a big deal. So it's like, okay, so also the value, right? Who's supposed to do what? So it's a little bit of about the, let's just not see as men and women separately, but men and women combined to be the whole unit, and young and older as well, not just young and trying to get old people to act like young people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. Just because something is healthy when you're young does not mean it's healthy when you're old as well. And there's different phases of life, and I do think that we should follow those. There's a rhythm to the day, there's a rhythm to the year, and there's a rhythm to the life. We need more sleep when we're younger. We need a lot less when we're older. I do think we need more activity when we're younger, and I do think that we need less when we're older. Even though activity is still important, it's just less important than it is when we're younger, especially in your middle ages too. If you're a middle-aged American with diabetes, exercise is extremely important for you. So is supplementation and good food and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
the benefits for elderly people can be as simple as just walking for 30 minutes a day, right? 90 minutes a week, something incredibly simple like that can have a huge, huge benefit. It's not going to have the same benefit for a 16-year-old, 30 minutes of walking.
Right. But I
So
mean, we have feet for a reason, right? We have to use them,
we're
the
supposed
legs.
to use, we're built to use our bodies, yes. And again, there's lots of things like gardening, and you even mentioned housework. I mean, I cut the lawn the other day. I was pouring sweat out there. These things, they don't have to be weightlifting. That you can get a good workout, good
Right.
exercise, good blood flow, keep your muscles active, keep them from atrophying, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back
Yeah.
to Paul Bragg for a second because I had an unanswered question there. It was Paul Bragg Sr. who did start the apple cider vinegar company, Bragg's, and his
Mm-hmm.
son, because I read one of his books, his son's book, Paul Bragg Jr. It was about apple cider vinegar. He wrote a bunch of books. And I remember looking him up. This is a year ago or something. I looked him up and said, wow, he didn't live very long. Yeah, he died at
Yeah.
67. His dad died
Mm.
at 81. He died at 67. Not very good for a health guru. He was big on
Nope.
exercise as well.
And apple cider vinegar, that was his that's the guy that started the fad with it.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I just can't find the huge benefits always mentioned about it. I just can't find them. I mean, I think it is good. There's a component of it that's like, okay, you eat some starchy foods. and then you don't absorb as much of the carbohydrates. I get that part, right? But it being like this super healthy, silver bullet that's being, pretty much called, I don't think so. I mean, it's way overblown, and it's very, very situational in my point of view. Derek Lonsdale that I mentioned, he was pretty much the pioneer as in vitamin B1. He has a really good book. It's not the typical book, an easy book if you really go into it, but he goes into the Krebs cycle and all the vitamins needed, and also his clinical practice and the megadosing and the different forms of vitamin B1. And I mean, I think he has an interview and in YouTube, and he is sharp. I mean, he was 90 something and he was so sharp. I was like really amazed with that. So I was like, that's when I started like really looking a lot more into vitamin B1 and the rate limitation of it, and being one of the critical vitamins that right now I think is plaguing us, as in the lifestyle and foods we're eating. So I think that is a health guru, which didn't really name himself like as one, not that well known, but there are some groups around that really know about his work, even in the orthomolecular. I think they didn't pay as much attention to that, when vitamin B1 right now is very critical. Because I think the orthomolecular community focuses a little bit too much on antioxidant activity, and kind of like goes a little bit arbitrary to the oxidation process and the necessity of it, the rhythmic aspect of this. Lonsdale really did go into that, and there are a few critiques on one of the forms that he uses, but other than that, I think he was really spot on, and he went into metabolism, not just the nutrient, but really the transformation and need.
And he did live to 100.
Got to 100.
Yeah, he got to
Okay.
100. He just died in May 2024. Several books, at least 5 books. I have not heard of him though, yeah. And I couldn't find much about like what he ate or what he did or anything.
Right. And we could actually tie this into, if we get to talk about heavy metals in another call, because there is one of the supplements used that can move around heavy metals, But so there's a little bit of controversy with his clinical practice. But in any case, I think he has really great stuff to, and insights. Even something that they call vitamin dependency, that it goes way beyond deficiency. So there's also this other aspect, which it's impossible to live to 100 years old and 96 years old and go to the gym, even like this guy. Regardless if I think it was, the best or not, how did they get so far? So they had high functionality and peak performance, right? And peak performance and functionality directed in the correct way, instead of just running and saying, okay, I'm really fit, is in, okay, well, they've got this really powerful, brain power, and then they can think their way into doing things way easier for starters, and they don't train themselves, but they got really far. And even if it is not a deficiency per se, a conditional essential supplement, which they also started going into, like creatine, one of the most undervalued supplements I think that's out there. So, for example, for fitness and weightlifting, I mean, creatine just gives you more punch, right? You can do a lot more. You've got main as well. If we take it or not, if we take it, we're going to have more power overall for the entire body, right? So there are even like studies about depression, and just showing how creatine has way better effects, just 5 grams of it, you know? So all these people, they were peak performers. They were definitely peak performers. They had really high functionality. So peak performance for longer. I mean, if you take it into like a comparative way, you can say this guy lived to be 96 and he was equivalent of someone that was 66 years old. So he continued having a really high functionality and performance for way longer. So it's impossible to really separate functionality from health. And health goes, I mean, it's the basis of longevity. I think that kind of goes into the longevity concept, right? Like stay young for longer, pretty much.
Yeah, and I guess that's worth really bringing up here too. What we do in the business is focus on quality of life, right? We deal with problems primarily. We're supposed to solve people's problems. They have blood pressure problems, blood sugar problems, arthritis, skin problems, weight problems, sleep problems, quality of life is our job. Degenerative and chronic problems, problems caused by processed foods, problems caused by nutrient deficiencies. That's one conversation. And often we get tangled up in the lifespan conversation as well. And Dr. Wallach is guilty of this. He is. I can't let him
Oh
off
yeah.
the hook for this. I try not to focus so much on lifespan. I just did an episode a couple of weeks ago with a man named Scott Carney. He's an investigative journalist, but he mentioned one line at one point. He said, "I don't want to hear a 25-year-old tell me about longevity." And it makes absolute sense, right? A lot of us are
Yeah.
speculating on what might cause us to live a long time, and yet when we just looked at two cases that are pretty different people, Jack LaLanne and Derek Lonsdale. Lonsdale wasn't a weightlifter, right? That
Right.
wasn't his thing. He doesn't look like a fit guy. He looks like an academic,
Yeah.
right? I don't know
Completely.
exactly what he ate and stuff, but it's a different person. So it is a little bit speculative. The longest of people live all over the world. They eat pretty radically different diets, and there's just a lot of different possible components to their longevity. Food, religious belief is one, and meaning of life and community and all that stuff. Nutritional availability, hydration, whether they drink and smoke or don't, and there's actually a ton of different factors there. So it can be a very, very complicated conversation to talk about lifespan. And you might do everything well and improve your quality of life and still die young, right? Like Paul Bragg Jr., said he fixed his health problems and then he still died
Hmm.
at 67. And this is something I mentioned very at the beginning of this. It's a dirty secret. I know several people in this business who did fix their health problems, and that's also worth honing in on for a second. They had health problems to begin with, just like me, just like you, Yannick, just like
Yeah.
Dr. Wallach. We weren't born optimally, but we fixed our health problems, and yet some of these people still got cancer and died. A few months ago, someone sent me a obituary for someone I was very shocked that they died.
Hmm.
He did several interviews with Dr. Wallach actually and other gurus and stuff. I believe he was in our company for a while and then he parted ways for political reasons. I don't think it was like didn't believe in the 90 anymore. I think it was political. But he knew the message regardless, is my point. He knew the message, and to my knowledge, he adhered to the message. He might have disagreed with olive oil or something like that and used olive oil, but I think he followed the message for the most part. And he died. It looks like cancer because the obituaries don't tend to tell you. It just says, oh,
Yeah.
he had a long battle, right? He passed away after a long battle. Well, to me, that
If
probably
it was
means,
battle, it was probably cancer because they
yeah.
take it as a battle, right?
So
Like
he's
a
not the only
war.
one. He's not the only one that I know who knew about the message, did the message, at least most of the message for several years, and then still got cancer. And I don't think this is taking away from the message. I think this just means that the message is actually more complicated than we thought, and or more complicated than we tend to promote. Whereas once you have cancer too, it's very serious, and most people, even the ones in our business and stuff, they tend to do the chemo or the surgery or whatever, and they don't fully explore all the alternative options. So it's a mess to say. We don't have a controlled situation here. People make all kinds of different choices. There was another guy I know in the business who he was a hardcore, he was a doctor, but he was a weightlifter, an Ironman uh, athlete, and he also got cancer and died as well. And I do think he did the conventional treatment as well as the nutrition, but doing nutrition at the same time as chemo, I don't think that's optimal. Doing nutrition instead of chemo, I also don't think that's optimal. If you have cancer, I think you need to do a lot more than nutrition. I think you need to take advantage of all of the different things that are in the alternative world. It could be a huge conversation there. Just
Right.
saying, I wouldn't agree that the way they went about the problem was optimal. And we don't know why the cancer came. Was it because of olive oil? Was it because of gluten? Because a lot of people don't listen to the food message. They just take the supplements.
Right.
Was it because of EMF? Was it because of EMF? Was it because of stress?
Was it because of seed oils?
Was it because of seed oils? Yeah, just being a little bit too lax on the message itself. Eating out, traveling around, it's pretty much impossible to avoid seed oils completely on the road, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I would really like to go and hammer this out, but I'm just saying the only reason I dived into this is because quality of life is different from lifespan, and I'm not claiming to know to have it all figured out when it comes to cancer. And there are several factors to heart disease as well, but most of these people don't seem to die of heart disease. It seems to be cancer is the most common way that a health guru can die, unless they're just a fitness person who doesn't supplement and they drop dead from a heart attack when they're running. A lot
Right.
of these guys
Right.
we're talking about here today, they died of cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you were saying it very clearly as there are a lot of things. It's not just nutrition, it's where you start at. So there's a when component to it. When is it useful to do something, to not do it? And my intent, for example, is going to go into PhD on. I'm really not interested that much in that aspect of like saying that okay, PhD just because you have it, it'll mean something, right? But it's just that you focused on something in a form of seeing, observing, and taking a method, right? Really integrating behavioral biology and not just the nutrition part because they're just words, right? We call it chemical, we call it electromagnetic radiation, we call it, we have names for it, but in reality, it's all just like a big field with all of it there. So if you take like okay, let's see the patterns of people that would do this in different species, in different places, in different times, I think it's also useful. And there's this idea also that you should live long. I mean, why are you so afraid of not living long? Right? Because that would mean a fear of death, and then you have fear of death and you don't enjoy life as much. And that's where um, religion and mythology come in, and or psychology, this attempt to like physiologically it makes sense. It's just like running a marathon. If your heart's pumping and you're afraid of so many things and you're wearing yourself out, even though you can't see it, it's not that apparent, but you may be sitting and your heart's at 120 beats per minute, and you're fearful constantly. So even the attempt, so this goes a little bit more into the Zen Buddhist approach, right? And Vedanta and this field view and Zen Buddhism of okay, so if you're afraid constantly of living longer and you're doing so many things to live longer and it's such a way that you'll drain yourself. So it's useful to take approaches, but if you go too extreme, then in some cases, okay, it's required, right? Get back on track. But how long can you do it? How much does it drain you? So I don't focus on longevity anymore, not that much. Because at the end of the day, I mean, when it happens, it'll happen and you won't even know about it because you're gone, right?
Mm,
It already happened. But if you're fearful of it constantly, then you're constantly motivated and using up all those resources and not just being there. So just being there at the moment and not, like this uh a typical guy that talks about it is I think Eckhart, The Power of Now, which by not really going that far, you have that life quality. And there is absolutely no way to not translate that into physiology and metabolic rates and transformation. So it's just goes hand in hand. I think you put it all together. That's why I'm interested in knowing, like, Derek Lonsdale and this other fitness guru and what was their lifestyle? What were they doing? When did they sleep? What these types of questions, which we kind of like lose sight of. Because why do we want to live to be 150 years old if we're really not enjoying that much? That's just my take on it. I prefer enjoying and having good health, the whichever time. It doesn't really matter. I can't put a number on it. I wouldn't know. When if I get to be at 70 years old, right, then I'd say, oh, well, I liked it this way. But right now I have no clue.
Yeah,
So
fair
I
enough.
think that even goes hand in hand with what you said about this, the guy that said like, why I'm not gonna, why would I be listening to a 25-year-old about pretty much life experience when they don't have any? They have very limited, right?
Yeah, well, or how to live to 100 when you're 25, and I
Right.
get it.
I mean, just makes no sense.
So, yeah, I'm young too. I'm 34, and really, I'm studying longevity, but it's a pretty confusing topic. And I can't say with any certainty. There's no way I can guarantee, Yannick, if you do this, this, and this, you will live to 95 years old. I can't say that. But what I can say is if you do this, this, and this, your blood pressure should start to come down. Your weight should start to come down. You should start to sleep better. Things that we can measure in days, weeks, and months rather than the next 60 years kind of thing, right? I cannot make any possible claims on how long you're going to live. I can speculate. I just hope that's clear that it's a speculative endeavor, whereas we can
Totally
tell
agree.
if your blood markers go down, your blood pressure goes down, or whatever it is actually bothering you right now and actually impacting your quality of life and your health right now. We can hopefully fix that with a lot more confidence. But yeah, Jack LaLanne, he was famous for saying, "I can't die ever because it'll ruin my image." And I think Dr. Wallach is very much the same way. He used to claim that he's trying to live to 200. I highly, highly doubt he is going to live to 200. Don't mean to be negative here, but my God, I don't think so. He's 84 right now, and I'm pretty sure that doing 30 years on the road, 30 plus years, nearly killed him. You know, I was on the road
Yeah.
for a few years, and I said, "Wow, this is probably going to kill me." And ruining my quality of life at the same time. It's a grueling existence. So when we're talking about a lot of these people, I think that should be in mind as well. That just because you're speaking about health doesn't absolve the fact that you are still speaking. And the life of a speaker is basically the life of a traveling salesperson. And
Right.
it's not easy, especially in the days of air travel here. But even before that, it's not an easy life. You don't have control over your food completely and your sleep schedules. It's very stressful as well. Even speaking online, and speaking to people, I get stressed, man. I'm not a people person. It does stress me out. Going live, hitting that button to record on Instagram, it definitely increases my stress. Big, big, big time. This business increases my stress, to be honest. And I know that most of the people we talked about today are not really in the business of giving individual protocols and stuff. I mean, they probably have a more relaxed life than I do, but I'm just saying from my position in the health industry here, it's not chill at all. Zero chill. It is so stress. I turn my phone on in the morning, my blood pressure goes up.
Right.
I've been behind this week on stuff. We had a internet outage for 9 days. We had a hurricane here in Houston. Oh my gosh, we had so many messages and emails and all this stuff I had to catch up on. It took me a week to catch up on it. And then even this whole week, I'm still behind. I'm a little bit stressed about it. It's Friday here. I got to spend the rest of the afternoon going through emails, and I'm probably not going to get them all. I'm just saying, I'm doubting I'm going to live to 100 with this type of a lifestyle. And it's also
Right.
impacting my immediate quality of life as well. I'm looking for ways to change the way that I do this so it doesn't actually kill me.
Right.
But
Right.
I did read a book recently. It's called A Cry Unheard: New
Mhm.
Medical Insights or New Insights into the Medical Consequences of Loneliness by James Lynch. Very good book. And it was talking about how loneliness and being away from your culture and stuff can correlates with heart disease, basically. Very
Mhm.
interesting in that part of the book. But there's another part of the book that was talking about their blood pressure experiments that they've been doing for decades. And we tend to take blood pressure just one piece at a time, right? You just take it now and, oh, this is my blood pressure. Where they would do continuous monitoring of blood
Mhm.
pressure and
Mm, that's interesting.
see how it goes up and down when they're doing
Uh-huh.
different things. And what they noticed is when people were speaking,
Yeah.
the blood pressure tended to go way up. So, and they have this whole theory here as well about
Speaking in front of people or just like,
just speaking to people,
okay, makes sense. Yeah.
form of stress. They also have another part of the book. It's like three parts. One of the parts is about how lower education makes people feel inadequate, and so the way that they speak to people, it stresses them out. They tend to speak faster. Fast speaking was actually a big part of it, that fast speakers
Hmm.
had higher blood pressure, and they connected that to education level and inadequacy. Basically, they're trying to make up for whatever how they
Right,
feel
right,
by
right.
speaking faster.
Yeah, listen to me, right? I'll try harder. So
Yeah,
I'll speak faster.
I know I'm a pretty fast talker as well, but it kind of worried me after reading this book that speaking speaking
Uh-huh.
in stressful situations, and to me, speaking at all is kind of stressful. Again, I'm a pretty lone wolf here. I don't have that much to say, to be honest. Like in my regular life, I'm a pretty quiet guy, and definitely doing these speaking engagements and stuff, especially live, it's extremely stressful for me. I'm not monitoring my blood pressure, but I bet it goes way, way, way up. So I'm just saying that a lot of these people spoke in some capacity, either in a university, they're professors, or they're traveling salesmen, and that is going to impact their lifespan, in my opinion.
Yeah, it'll be tiring, right? It'll be depleting. I mean, in a way, you get a reward. If not, why are you doing it? If you have no reward, I don't think anyone would be doing it, right? But it is really depleting. And going in front of so many people, um, this is where if you ever get to read like Desmond Morris, he talks about all these eyes on you, and all these eyes, they just have this innate biological, it's unknown, just looking at someone straight all the time. It's like really difficult. Like when we were younger, right? Like, oh, you'll have like this duel and see who would last longer looking like just straight. It's so difficult. So then how are you going to have the pressure of 30 eyeballs or 50 or 1,000? It's so depleting. It's so tiring. So yeah, definitely lifestyle, major issue. Just seeing how you can like get to that point. I'm also kind of like struggling there, trying to make it a little bit more of a system and just start focusing on mentoring and coaches for people that want to learn as opposed to one-on-one. Just create like this system and be able to have both because right? We can't be preaching about life quality and feeling good if we're constantly like so drained, not really enjoying it.
Well, you know
So
what
I
I
get
can
you.
say? I
I
can
get you.
say that the nutrients get me through it. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm working harder now than I ever have in my whole life. I'm doing 12, 14-hour shifts. People think it's me exaggerating. I've been doing this for months straight. I'm doing this because we have to, because cost of living just increased through the roof,
Yeah.
and I was doing okay before, and then now it's like, I'm barely doing it because of the cost of living. So
Yeah.
I got to work harder. What am I going to do? I'm going to get a
Right.
job, or I'm going to work harder at what I already do. And I am shifting more into teaching too, for the same reason. I don't want to deal with one-on-ones forever. I can't do one-on-ones forever. How many emails can you answer in a day? It's not that many,
Right.
right? Give a personal protocol to every day. There's a limit here, and I reached the limit over a year ago, what I could physically get done in a workday. So therefore, my workday just
Right.
became longer, and now I'm at the limit where I can't physically work anymore. It's not going to be possible to do that. But the
Right,
nutrients
but
do get
but
me
you
through it.
also have something, you have an attribute, right? Something that you can give a value, which is also the knowledge, because it's not, it hasn't been for free. All those nutrients have gone into doing stuff, the experience, which goes into wisdom, and that's why teaching just starts making sense. We're kind of like getting out of this age, right? But then I think it's an age. So, I mean, I love a lot of things he's said and done, and really controversial and gone at it, complete rebel. I love it, right? But he also goes like the 200-year-old. I mean, it's like, it's does he have to, or I don't know why, is there, so people will believe it. I mean, I think we believe him either way. But in that aspect, maybe retiring or kind of like talking less is what's next for him, what makes sense for me. So yeah, I definitely think it's like, where are you at? Is it time for this shift or not? And I think we're kind of reaching that age where we lived through all those deficiencies. We know ways out. We can teach that. You can't get that really from a book. I mean, it you can't read it. Oh yeah, I just gained wisdom. It's knowledge, ways, maybe, right? You said the key word. I think you said, okay, this should happen, but will it happen? I can't really tell people 100% and everything, this will happen if you do this. Some things I can, but very few, you know? But sorry, yeah, I interrupted you there because I think, it's just makes sense that there's a limit. We can't do more
There is a
in that
limit.
aspect. I believe it's better to show people how to do it.
I am happy that the message has allowed me to perform at this level for this long, but yeah, I don't want to work weekends forever. I don't. I don't want to do 12, 14 hours a day. I love work, but there's limits. So yeah, I got to shift things. And if I continue doing this, then I might be a statistic dying at 61 too. And
Right.
I don't want that. And
And will be recorded.
yeah, and
Right.
it's also not enjoyable. I'm not happy that tomorrow and Sunday I have to make Instagram reels basically all weekend. It's not
Right.
cool. It's not cool. It just needs to be
Yeah,
done right now, and I need to also be smart about it and have a little bit of a less stressful lifestyle because stress is a killer too. So I
definitely.
wanted to bring up a few more here before we go.
Okay.
Um, Dr. Roy Walford, another very famous health author. He wrote books like The 120-Year Diet, How to Double Your Vital Years, and he had a lot of followers. And he died at 79. 79. He was trying to get to 120. He lived to 79. Cause of death was ALS, neurodegenerative disease. So the article I'm reading here said he should have heeded research showing that caloric restriction hastens death from ALS. So yeah, calorie restriction, I do believe, was part of Roy Walford's message. And of course, there's more to health and longevity, I believe, than calorie restriction by itself. You need calorie restriction plus a lot of nutrients.
That made me think of what could have happened. What
Yeah, if,
what do you
if he had
think
mega
was,
nutrition in there too.
yeah, which nutrients do you think would have helped him out? I have a take on it.
Minerals,
Like
for sure.
minerals.
Across the board, minerals.
I would go for cholesterol
Yeah?
in this case. Yeah, yeah, because cholesterol is a really, really um expensive process, energetic process. It's really expensive to do it. So, for example, creatine, cholesterol being there to really help reduce the amount of burden as the entire body for creating. That's why I preach. I kind of go a little bit into the area of preaching with animal cholesterol, not plant cholesterol, which is not the same thing. But I think cholesterol would have been one.
Well, his
Um,
nervous system degenerated. It's made of cholesterol, the white matter, right?
yeah, yeah, that's why I kind of like started focusing on, okay, well, seems he really had needed some stuff there. Just eating egg. I would have gone between eating eggs and liver, probably. He would have gotten, chicken liver and hearts, because he would have gotten CoQ10. He would have gotten selenium is really high in chicken liver. He would have gotten all these cholinergic for his nerves and his the nervous system, the cholinergic type of material he would need. Choline, he would have the lecithin to carry it there. I mean, he would have just had all those components. So minerals, yeah, I mean, yeah, everyone needs them, right? It had to be there. But in this case, for like the nervous system, I would have focused a little bit more on that and on vitamin E. Definitely vitamin E, big time. So, um, so when it has to do with high oxidation on the membrane, you want the cholesterol for starters to get in there good. But do you know what are the main components on the membrane of the cell to protect it?
Other than the B vitamins and cholesterol.
Well, cholesterol, yeah, it has its functional component and structural, but like the antioxidant type of nutrients, because that's pretty much like the barrier, right? Where this guy had issues. He was just high oxidation and damage and not enough repair.
Well, then I would put vitamin E at the top of that list, known to improve the membranes, and it's a well-known antioxidant, not just by itself, but also improves the function of other antioxidants and
Yeah,
yeah, just
vitamin E,
overall.
totally, right? I would have gone number one, vitamin E. Um, Number two, probably CoQ10,
Hmm.
probably ubiquinol. And number three, I would have gone for the other component in cell membranes, are carotenoids. That's where either if it was through supplementation or through juicing, I would have gone for those. And also, for example, A's contain lutein, and it's in an ester form and it's highly absorbable. So I would have gone through that route. But it's, this is fun because we can kind of like speculate on, okay, he had this, and these are like approaches where they're probably deficiencies, or he needed high doses. Maybe not even deficiencies, but something to compensate.
Some
But
therapeutic doses there at that point.
yeah, 79 years old. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, didn't get far. He really
no.
did pretty much the same as the average Joe.
Yeah, not much better. I think I have that book somewhere. I don't think I've read it. I maybe did though. I lose track of things, but I'm not that interested in reading the book anymore if he died at 79.
But he was focused on calorie restriction. And in those times, calories, well, still right now, it still lingers on. Well, fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, big no nos, 9 calories. So he would have had to avoid them if he was into the calorie restriction. He had to.
It's
There,
very
there's,
easy to rack up the calories with fat.
yeah. Yeah, if you take that approach, right? So that's why I was thinking like he probably was missing this stuff.
Absolutely. Another one, Dr. Stuart M. Berger, author of Forever Young, 20 years younger in 20 weeks. And his premise was vitamins and minerals are at the heart of living long and prospering. He
Hmm.
died of a heart attack at age 40. Not very
Age
good.
40.
40.
Wow. Oh, well, he didn't get far at all.
He did not get far at all. And I'm not familiar with that book either. These are only names that I recognize. There's a big list of health gurus who died young, but I don't recognize all of them. Another one that I recommend, or sorry, that I recognize is Pavo Erola. He wrote a book. The one that I read was the hypoglycemia diet, and it recommended
Uh-huh.
actually a low protein diet for hypoglycemia. I actually have tried that in some tough cases. I don't get that many tough blood sugar cases, but I've gotten some weird ones over the years. And I have tried his diet with a few people. I got mixed results. Some of them it helped, some of them it didn't. There's other modern people who argue against high protein. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm just saying that's why I know him for
Yeah.
recommending low protein hypoglycemia diet. But he also wrote other books, How to Keep Slim, Healthy, and Young with Juice Fasting. He wrote a bunch of books, and he died of a stroke, age 63. Not very good.
Nope. No. You can't take that too serious, right?
Hmm. Too
Because
much
that's his
juicing, you
track
mean?
record. Yeah. Yeah, too much. But in general, his method, it's like he went hypoglycemia. Why? So he was going into I mean,
This was
hypoglycemia.
to fix hypoglycemia. He's not recommending
Oh, to
going into,
fix it.
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I understood. Like going into hypoglycemia. I mean, I was amazed he got to that age.
No, you'll get to into a coma pretty quick if you want.
Yeah, a lot more protein. Okay, yeah, very typical, but really limited. He's not saying much in juicing. So yeah, when I hear juicing, it's like essential oils. It's like which essential oil are you talking about? Each one is like you have to know a lot about each single one. So it's not the same thing to juice um, carrots than it is to juice parsley. It's absolutely not the same thing at all, right? So I don't know.
True. He's a bit old school too. The book that I read of his, I think it was from back in the 70s. So, I mean, I think he's been dead a while.
Hmm,
I have one more guy that I want to bring up who's not actually a health guru, but who impresses me. Noam Chomsky is
hmm.
still alive. He's 95 years old.
Mhm.
He's a political speaker. He was a linguist originally, then he's been a political speaker for a very, very long time. And boy, I'm surprised that he's still alive. He is looking very old. He looks like Darwin now. He doesn't look that good, honestly. He's got age spots all over him and everything, but he's still going. He's still writing, he's still reading, he's still sharp. He's slowed down a lot, like in his speaking and everything, but
He's 95,
he's
right?
95, man. He's still going, and I am impressed. And I was trying to find out, what does he eat? Does he actually do anything? I've never really heard him speak about food or anything, but he has said he's been eating for 30 years the same sandwich downstairs. Uh, Turkey on marble rye from the deli downstairs with no frills, no mayo, perhaps a slice of tomato and a leaf of lettuce to complement the turkey. Definitely hold the avocado. Yeah, so he's been eating the same sandwich every day, and it used to be a bagel and American cheese. So he's not eating well. Like he's eating American takeout food here since 1955. He said since he's been working at MIT since 1955. He's been eating this same lunch every day, except before when it was a bagel and cheese. And yet he's still alive. Now he doesn't speak very quickly. I wanted to bring that up. He's always been a pretty comfortable speaker. He doesn't look rushed. He doesn't look stressed. And especially now, he's still sharp. He still remembers his facts, but he's slowed down even more. But he was always a little bit of a slow delivery.
Mhm. But I mean, that's an achievement. And by the way he's eating, I think it's even those are the most interesting cases for me.
I don't think he works out. I don't think he ever worked out. I think he's a straight up bookworm.
Okay, so he doesn't do much for starters, and in physical, mechanical, locomotion type of thing, moving around. But he does think and write and talk, But in either case, just being able to continue doing that the way he's eating, it should, in theory, not be very possible, right?
Yeah.
So there are other things that are not just nutrition that are clearly impacting a lot more. Who knows if he fasts a lot? Who knows, But I mean,
I wouldn't put him
he,
as a big eater. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too wildly, but when I worked in the university myself, the professors who were the most serious about their work, and I assume Chomsky is one of those people, the ones that were most serious about their work didn't eat very much. And I can't picture him caring that much about food. He still is dedicated to his work. He's been dedicated for a long time, and he's eating a sandwich for lunch. That's not a very big meal. He's probably taking it pretty easy on the food. I don't picture him having a bag of Doritos every afternoon or something. Doesn't seem to be as interested in eating as he is in reading and information.
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I have a friend whose dad is 88 years old, and he drinks coffee in the morning. He drinks tequila in the morning. He does go up and there's like a gym there, and he, does some weightlifting, not much. Then he's totally dehydrated. Then he drinks some more tequila. And he goes out with his friends, but he's drinking every day, and he's also drinking his coffee every single day in the morning. So then you start thinking, like, because I'm revisiting the idea of coffee, maybe sporadically, maybe in certain forms. I'm just seeing it through another lens because there's something definitely there, which I just listen to these cases and I'm like, and he's sharp. I mean, he is so sharp, and you just see it, and it's like, okay, so everything I've read in these books and a lot of experience, it just doesn't match. But he's there, and I can see it, and it doesn't matter what you believe, he's still going at it like this other person. I mean, so there is definitely a lot more to it. We can't just say, okay, fixed, this is fixed. Yeah, there's something else. There's a lot of views even on alcohol. I do not preach on drinking alcohol or anything, but you don't know which type of effect it's having. Maybe social, I don't know. I mean, I can think of some, but in either case, I wouldn't think like drinking a tequila shot in the morning after coffee would be a good idea. But even then, he's still there and he's going strong. So I mean, he's going up to the gym and he's lifting weights, and he's moving around and you talk to him and he's sharper than my friends. So it's like, I don't know. I just have him as a comparison. And I thought about him because of what you're referencing this guy. And it's like, there's a lot more to it. That's the only thing I can say. I don't think we can say we've got it down with longevity at all. Like,
No, and
I don't
honestly,
know.
too, there's still a long-standing misbelief that we live a lot longer now than we used to, whereas really it's been pretty statistically flattened out to show that it's actually just that we're not dying young anymore. That's the
Yeah.
main thing.
Yeah.
We
Just,
we
I
don't
think,
die as babies. The childhood diseases have largely been eradicated, so it looks like our lifespan in average has gone up because of the lack of deaths, lack of
right.
childhood deaths, lack of violent deaths. Violence is the lowest it's ever been all throughout history. But they say the average lifespan was like 30 years old or something in Victoria times. No, it
Oh, yeah. It's
wasn't.
so
It's
false.
just it's
Yeah.
just that the death rate was very high. But there was plenty of old people back then as well.
Yeah.
Michelangelo in the Renaissance lived to like 90 or something like that. I mean, there was old people all throughout history. And people obviously, of course, they usually reference the Bible and say there's people who were hundreds of years old back then. Well, we don't have to go to those cases because there's plenty of 80, 90, and even 100-year-olds just in regular history living in times that we would consider very primitive, without plumbing, without all kinds of amenities and stuff like that, no
Right. Yeah.
electricity. And obviously, there's lots of hardships in that type of life, and they didn't have any vitamin supplements or anything like that. And we can talk about where they might have got their minerals, but I'm just saying, people who did not seem to live optimally, like Michelangelo, who's busy working, he was not busy being a health fitness guru, or
And
jogging or anything like
smelling the
that.
paint, right? I
Probably
mean,
no one ever jogged until like 1910. This never existed. But
right.
no, he wasn't smelling paint. He was a sculptor primarily, and we didn't have chemical paints back in the Renaissance time. That was invented in the 1800s, so it's pretty clean, except for breathing in the dust from the marble, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, which is also there, right? But in any case, I mean, how did they live so long? I remember reading those. They're like, oh yeah, this is 70, this is 80 years old. This guy is like, um, and I would always think, weren't they supposed to be living like to their 30s and it was typical? I think they were. I don't remember the age, but I think an average it was about 71 years old, 72 years old from here to Rome, Roman times. I don't know. Maybe you have a better number,
I don't have
but
a better number, but I lied. Michelangelo lived to 88. But interestingly, his contemporary,
yeah.
Da Vinci looked a lot older, but he died at 67. And I do believe that he was more on the vegetarian side of things way back then.
Hmm.
So, hey, maybe that's an important factor here too. None of these people who made it a long time were vegetarian. I don't think Chomsky's not a vegetarian. They said he eats turkey sandwiches. Jack LaLanne was not a vegetarian. He didn't eat dairy, but he had eggs and seafood and all this stuff. Linus Pauling was not a vegetarian. Derek Lonsdale doesn't look like he was a vegetarian.
No,
I know
no,
you can't
definitely
judge it
not.
by a picture, but he didn't seem to write about it or anything.
Never.
I'll
No.
read some of his books. I'm interested. But yeah, none of them are vegetarians here. Hey, and some of these ones who leaned more towards the vegetarian, they're gone. They died young.
That's one of the few things I can say. Like vegetarian, it won't really get your odds up of living longer. I don't think so. I think it's more of the rhythmic and also um, just don't be so limited in ideology to think that we can get it from plants because nothing sustains that. Not anatomically, not evolution wise, and our GI tract is shorter. We absorb a lot quicker. So that isn't the way out. But I can't say pure carnivore is the way out. I don't think so. By no means. I mean, by no means, because we're also limiting so many other things. So, I mean, at least when it comes to eating, I would say vegan, total no, completely. Vegetarian, start shifting away from a lot of options. And carnivore, pure carnivore, still highly bioavailable, but also limited in so many aspects. And none of these guys are vegetarian or vegans, at least until not the ones that live long. At least they gave no indicator of it. So I'd have to agree. At least we can find a certain trend,
This is one thing
within
here.
the
Yeah.
call. Yeah.
That 88-year-old tequila drinker, he's an omnivore, I assume.
Oh yeah, he's eating his Mexican guisados, like a chicken and sauce and mole, and he's eating everything. And he's eating his bread and he's eating his gluten. So
Fair enough. Okay,
yeah,
just a couple more things I wanted to touch on. Yeah,
yeah,
you mentioned coffee. I'm on the fence about coffee too. I just read an excellent book called Caffeine Blues.
hmm,
And I know I'm addicted to coffee. I've been addicted to coffee for 12 years. I've been cutting it way down. I used to drink 10 cups a day before I got on the supplements and stuff. Could no longer handle that much because I was absorbing more once I got on the program, got gluten
right,
free and everything. Could only handle a couple of cups a day. But a few years ago, I cut out the second cup. And then more recently, as I was reading this book, I decreased the size of my cup again, and I've been weaning it all the way down. And in fact, tomorrow is my last day because I'm running out of coffee. But today, my cup of coffee was like it was like three
yeah,
ounces of coffee. It was nothing. It was just a little bit in my cup. And
yeah,
tomorrow will be my last one. Not so much for longevity, but since it does create stress, the caffeine, it does produce adrenal hormones. It's basically synthetic stress. It's not energy, it's
yeah,
stress.
yeah,
I figure I have enough stress in my life.
right,
And I don't need it. I really don't need it. I didn't start drinking coffee till I was 22, so I'm gonna try and get rid of it. I tried to get rid of it before, and it annoyed me that I couldn't. I got withdrawal from it, so this time I weaned it down, and it
mm,
seems to be totally fine. I hardly had any today, and I'm fine. But yeah, longevity wise, I mean, the longest cat in the world, it was a woman in Austin, Texas, and she gave her cat wine and coffee, and that kind of blew me away too, because yeah, we're supposed to be against these things, and yet, even the longest of people, some of them have alcohol and stuff. It's not pasteurized. It doesn't have added tannins and stuff that we do,
yeah,
but nonetheless, they do have alcohol. But I also quit alcohol myself too. I was never a big drinker, but cut the wine out completely. I feel fine. But you mentioned the stress too, and like, yeah, it could relax you. Social. You said social, and I thought relax.
yeah,
Absolutely, it could relax. And yeah, I'm probably not doing myself favors by staying up working late and not relaxing at all. And whether you use alcohol to do that or not, I think it is important to relax. Just like with exercise, if you exercise every day, it's bad for you. You need rest days, especially if it's intense
right, yeah,
exercise. So I'll do another coffee episode soon. I did one before. I'll do another one soon on my updated thoughts here. But yeah, it is interesting that I bet Chomsky drinks coffee too. I bet all these guys, most of
I
these
bet
guys
you they
do.
all do.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to coffee, there are 2 points that I've been thinking about a lot because I don't preach about coffee. I'm like anti-coffee in general. Um, but it has to do with performance, right? And how much you can do and get done. But I mean, in the American diet is the main source of antioxidants. So I think that helps out. There are not a lot of sources, but I don't think it's more that aspect, but it's more of the central nervous system stimulant. So in a certain way, if you do it in the right way, it could like benefit from this low dose stimulation to keep it active and doing because of the way the nervous system works is repeating and making it each time easier. That's I think the take on why I'm thinking that coffee may be, not probably not every day, um, but in certain amounts, certain forms, like okay, it could be a possibility, but I'm reevaluating my take on it because I've been against coffee and more towards matcha green tea for a long time. But now I'm like kind of like thinking, okay, well, maybe it is possible to have this benefit, something we're just not seeing it that way. But think I think it has a lot more to do with the central nervous system, not as a stress, because stress isn't bad per se. It's just how much do you have to do? But if it is focused on your central nervous system and you maintain certain benefits for longer and long-term potentiation and, not falling when you're older and not, maybe that's one of the ways in which coffee has helped, because I just see the studies and like I said, I'm not a fan, but I don't know if it's also the mycotoxins that it has, the dehydration effect, and if you compensate it somehow, that you might have these other benefits. I'm pretty sure there are certain benefits, even though I still don't include them in my program, but you have to test it out. We have to test something, then go back, test it again, see what happens. At least that's the way I do things. Let's see how you do with the coffee once you
Yeah.
completely withdraw from it,
Well, I
because
do
it's
feel
going to be
fine so
tomorrow,
far.
right?
Yeah, tomorrow will be my last day. So you did actually mention earlier something about carbonation. You said something about bicarbonate or something. This is also something I've been a little bit on the fence about. We don't recommend carbonation with meals, but carbonated water does appear in nature in some forms, and they have been known as like healing waters and stuff. And we probably all know that carbonation can make your stomach feel better if it's hurting. So what exactly were you saying there about carbonation? And do you think there's healing benefits to it?
Oh, healing benefits. Well, it's more of a natural requirement, I'd say. I'd say it would be essential to have. Um, Nobody talks about the pH levels, the acid base. No, I mean, almost nobody talks about it. Why isn't anybody focusing on that? There are parts of the animal that we would eat or plants that are also more alkaline, right? To help offset the eating the pure carnivore. That's why I'm also considering it. If we're omnivores, we're eating different sources. So we do have this acid base. It's just understandable. Before we would drink the blood from the animals, and that would have a lot of bicarbonates in it. We would drink the water, it would be in a river, it wouldn't be the same pH or anything of sort of one that's under, in wells and in other places. So we started just like when Dr. Wallach brilliantly talks about, okay, so there was electricity and now we have dams and then the water doesn't flow and doesn't, flood where the crops were grown. And then you get all these minerals and metals in the soil and they grow better. So we cut that natural cycle. We also cut it from water sources that are more alkaline in nature. We also cut the eating the complete animal and having all these other carbonate forms. That's why I was focusing more on calcium citrate than in, for example, because of the phosphorus calcium ratio and also because of the citrate that is required to offset the acidity per gram of animal protein. So I'm considering both because I'm not going to get people to drink carbonated water all the time, or I'm not going to get, it's limited right now. That vision is limited. So yeah, it does. I don't recommend it as much, but sodium bicarbonate, for example, does lower the blood stomach acid, which is what Dr. Wallach focuses more on. Okay, you'll reduce digestion. It is a good point, but there is also an amount of alkalinity, alkaline neutralizing components, or to neutralize the acid components. So seltzer water, really known for helping. You could drink it in between meals and you won't have that issue, right? It'll also, for example, if you start having a lot more bicarbonates, then you'll also your stomach cells will start compensating, and then you'll get more acidity after a while. It's not immediate, but that will happen. If you're talking about energy, you must think about carbon, like bicarbonates and carbon dioxide forms, bicarbonates being one of them, that they're really required for the cell to breathe. They are not antagonistic with oxygen. So if you want high energy, you need bicarbonates. If you want for the calcium to stay in place in your bones, you need bicarbonates. If you want to offset and not have issues with protein, animal protein, you need the bicarbonates. Um, so that's why I really think that we're missing that part. We forgot about it. We're not thinking about that aspect. In nutrition, I rarely, if almost ever, hear about acid base balance. Almost never. Just like the orthomolecular goes very much into the antioxidant oxidation, and the functional medicine doctors start like um, and getting onto that wagon, and then they're just like pure antioxidants. Well, we need both. So the same goes with acid base balance. And that's where I go into seltzer water um, as a way to not have those issues, because it might not show in your blood, but it will show in your interstitial tissue, which is where you start noticing this accumulation of acid. And it goes on for a long time. So even if you want more muscle mass and to retain muscle, you need a good amount of bicarbonates to offset the acid part. So even horses, I think it was considered that horses could not drink water with sodium bicarbonate because it was considered like a drug. They would just get so much more performance. Same thing happens with athletes. They get the sodium, they get the alkalinizing effect, and from sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, and you can just perform more.
So you believe in taking baking soda?
I do. I do. Not, you don't have to do it regularly. You can do it. I actually do it more at night when the pH cycle of the body is more towards the alkaline instead of in the morning. But if you do have a lot of acid reflux and everything, we know it's like, okay, yeah, it's usually low stomach acid, but bicarbonates also start stimulating the higher amount of acid secreted after time. So yeah, in use, I do use it a lot. I do recommend it, but you have to be careful with it. You have to know how to use it. And the easiest way, seltzer water, more milder, a little bit more enjoyable, even during fasts. And I wasn't sure during longer fasts, it does have this effect. It makes your stomach a little bit like bigger, so you feel a little bit more satiated. But I don't know if you know this, but there are risks for longer fasting. Your uric acid levels rise a lot. I mean, really, really high. So by doing that, it's not that you don't feel it as much. So yeah, base alkaline levels really important. Getting this proper mixture between plant foods and animal foods, not going to a stream of don't eat animal foods, and then you get these, because it also goes hand in hand with oxidation and antioxidants, and acid base is just so important, never talked about, because it doesn't have to do with calories, right? So if it's not calories, then why would you talk about it?
So you're saying you could get it from blood as well?
Right.
Interesting. Okay. One more question, then I have a closing out comment. Tomorrow I'm going to record a vitamin A episode. I know we were supposed to do it together here, but then somebody else said, "Hey, I'd love to do it with you." And okay, we're going to do it.
Right.
What dose of vitamin A did you take before you got symptoms, bad symptoms?
25,000, sometimes several days, 50,000 units. I did about 25,000 nonstop for a year.
And for anybody listening who this is out of context, for a lot of people are saying that retinol, which is what you took, right? Retinol?
Right.
They're saying retinol is toxic. Vitamin A comes in two forms. Obviously, we're going to go way deeper into it in the next podcast. I'm not sure which episode is going to post first here, but there's the carotenes, right? Beta carotene and plant vitamin A, they call it pro vitamin A.
Pro vitamin A.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it turns into retinol.
May.
It
Yeah.
may, yeah. It's non-toxic. The
Mm.
carotenes are completely non-toxic, and you can have mega doses, and no one's really disputing that. But retinol, there's a lot of people out there saying that it is very, very toxic. So I just definitely wanted to get that number written down here. You're saying you were taking 25,000 to 50,000 IUs for a year in supplement form, not in liver or anything.
in supplement form.
And when that finally started kicking in for you in a bad way, what were those symptoms?
Dry feet.
Dry feet.
Yeah, that's the very dangerous toxicity of vitamin A at those mega doses for that long.
Wow.
So, so yeah, um, something that's really good. It may be appropriate to also mention this about Andrew Saul is he talks about the risk to benefit ratio and the toxicity levels of vitamins in comparison to xenobiotics or allopathic medicine, LD50, which means a certain amount of mice that are tested with amounts of vitamin, let's say vitamin C, how much would they have to consume for half of the population, 50 out of the 100 to die? For vitamin C, it was close to a pound, right?
Hmm.
Vitamin A is one of the most toxic ones, but like I said, for so long taking it, and you know, it really didn't do much, and then I just waned off, stopped taking it for about 2 weeks, and I was fine. So your body does know how to like cope with it, detox, and it's better. One of the other ones that is not considered so toxic, but I think there is an issue even in the B complex formulations between, if I remember correctly, it's between 4 to 6 weeks for those levels to start accumulating because that's how long your body can will have it stored and you wear out of it. For example, thiamine, it'll be between 4 and 10 days normal, normally doing stuff. So then you start putting the 4 to 10 days with the let's say 6 weeks of the vitamin B6 and you start having an issue there, and there you can start having toxicity. And I do consider that toxicity to be a little bit worse than vitamin A, even though it's not considered as toxic because it goes, you start having issues with, well, neurological type of issues. So I wouldn't just consider toxicity, but also what type of symptoms or issues do you have when it's been going for a long time. Vitamin A, I didn't see much, but I have seen more from vitamin B6. So, in that aspect, it's like, okay, let's not just focus on toxicity, but also the risk of what's being damaged and how fast you can clear out. I don't know if that makes sense. I just haven't found any type of analysis that goes into that aspect of risk to reward ratio. But Andrew Saul was actually the person in his books. I started going on to the government data and I just said like, hey, these are great talking points. And it's very clear that vitamins are not as toxic and you can get out of those issues a lot easier and they're much safer. So even if this gives us a range as practitioners, clinicians, and you name it to really say, okay, you've got too much of this, just let's lower it or let's avoid it for a while and you won't have much issue. So that really gives us a lot of, well, that's why people aren't dying from vitamins,
Yeah,
pretty
fair.
much.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, and final thoughts here. When we were talking earlier about old people and what is the value they actually bring to society, my thoughts are, especially in the pre-modern times, the old people were responsible for the culture, essentially. They were responsible for communicating the history of the people, their beliefs, their religion, their myths, their songs, their all this stuff came from old people. You learned it through your younger years, and then you became an old person, and then you passed it down. And it's how cultures sustain themselves, especially without writing. A lot of these longest lived populations don't have writing. You've got Odysseys and Iliads and stuff that were transmitted
Yeah.
orally, and they were remembered by old people. They say there are people who would memorize the Quran, right? And preach it by memory, basically. You can't do that as a 22-year-old. You got to spend years learning it till you're an old person. Then you can communicate the cultural beliefs and your history and all this stuff. And it gives your community a foundation, I do believe.
Right. Let's although that memorization was using the Loki method, verbalizing and imagining places. I don't know if you've ever seen like there's this good book of about moonwalk. It's called Moonwalking with Einstein. And it's about this guy that goes into like these tournaments of remembering things and cards and stuff like that, and he takes it for real and goes for it and wins the next tournament in the United States. But he talks about this and how it was used in Greece to like have those huge books and be able to recite them and remember them, but that's, I think that's a lot more towards these times than really, when we were just more tribal. So if that makes any sense, but I just wanted to, because if not, it would be like, oh my God, we would be able to memorize books so easily. Why can't we now? you
Mhm.
know? But yeah, sorry, I just had to put that in there.
So, we have gone pretty backwards in this modern society where we put our old people in homes and we give them drugs and all this stuff, and to the point where they actually aren't worth anything. I don't mean that to sound too rude, but like my grandparents, especially my grandma, she couldn't even remember me at the end. Like what is the
Right.
point of that? Is she transmitting any culture? No. Is she giving me any meaning in my life? No. She is a zombie because she's on drugs. And this is very, very common. A lot of our old people, they're not serving a purpose. That's not giving them meaning in their own life, which I think is actually important to longevity. Some of these people who lived a long time, I bet they had a lot of meaning and they believed in what they were doing, and they have a strong foundation. They want to wake up every day. They're not just sitting around watching TV, daytime TV shows and stuff like that. They
Right.
have purpose. They have a sense of meaning, and
Helping
that
out
is
with kids too.
absolutely, and that is common to all the lungs of populations. And yeah, when you have grandparents and great grandparents that are in a home, they're not helping with the kids, they're not helping with the grandkids, they're not doing anything. They're not gardening. They're sitting around watching TV, playing bridge, maybe if they can, and they're being zombified on drugs. And yeah, it's just a terrible situation. And what we
Yeah.
have been left with now, we've been seeing this since I was a kid and before that, that over the 20th century and definitely now in the 21st century, the culture became dominated by kids. Kids were the ones that were producing the culture. Even though there are adults behind the record labels and stuff, it's people in their 20s, maybe early 30s who are the dominant pop culture icons and stuff, and they have largely been creating the
Yeah.
culture. And I think this has been to the absolute detriment of society and of culture itself. It's been the death of culture. I grew up in a neighborhood that had somewhat of a history behind it, a little bit, but it had a little bit of a culture. And it was the elders, not necessarily old people, but I was a kid, I mean, it was the older kids that were responsible for creating that culture. And, in this modern age too, especially in America and Canada, we're known for moving around a lot, right? At the drop of a hat, you'll move across the country for a
Right.
job opportunity and stuff. And I definitely saw everybody move out of my neighborhood, including myself, and there was nobody left there to have a culture with. And I'm just saying, I think this has kind of happened at large, where we've lost our footing. We don't have common ground. We don't have common religious beliefs or values or anything really to grasp onto. Even I know this is way more, this is kind of off topic from what this whole recording was, but I think this is important. Even back before internet, we would all watch the same TV shows. I'm not saying those TV shows are good, but like everybody watched the same shows and we had some kind of cultural understanding. Like we had things, we all watched the same shows so we could all relate to those same concepts and we could bring up things in shows that we understand. It was part of the culture, like it or not. And now everybody's watching their own thing. Everybody's listening to their own thing. Do you even know what's number one on the charts right now or something, right? You
No
probably don't.
idea.
You probably had no
No.
idea. Whereas in the past, you couldn't ignore it. If the Spice
Right.
Girls was number one, whether you liked it or not, you knew it,
Right.
right? You knew that song. It was just,
Yeah.
it gave us something to actually anchor onto. But yeah, in this last 100 plus years, we have seen culture be taken over by young people. And I think we're seeing the pinnacle of that right now with TikTok culture, whereas there is no culture and it changes every 2 seconds, literally. Meme culture just flies right on by you and the trends just fly right on by, and there's literally nothing for us to grasp onto and to relate to together. There's nothing for us to experience together. Very, very little. I mean, this is why people still watch sports and stuff. It's one of the few things that you can actually relate commonly with other people, right?
Right. Yeah.
Used to be these big movies. Everybody saw Jaws. Everybody saw Jurassic Park. Everybody saw Forrest Gump, and everybody can relate to that in some way. And now we just have all this. We have more movies than ever have been created recently, right? Most of them seem to suck, but there's more than ever, more music than ever. There's more content than ever, and there's so much that none of us have a common ground on it. We all get our own personalized feed, right? And so what
Right.
I see today is different from what you see today, and there's just nothing for us to grip onto. And where are the old people in this? They're gone. They're gone.
They're
There are no
gone.
old people. There's even, we used to have older, wiser, like talk show hosts and stuff. No, they're
Right.
gone. Now it's just a bunch of
Yeah.
young people, a bunch of young yuppies. And I'm a young person too, but it's weird that I feel old and I'm 34 and I'm looking around like, where are the old people? Where's the wisdom? Where is the leadership? Where are the anchors? Because old people always were
Right.
the anchors to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, now
Yeah.
they're
Yeah. Of
gone. Now they're
course.
replaced with dancing TikTok people.
Oh my God. Yeah. Goes, well, it goes beyond nutrition, of course, but well, in other
This goes
times,
to meaning in life, meaning in culture. What are we doing here?
yeah, purpose. Because you're talking about, well, even before, it was already breaking down. Society was already this, but it wasn't like right now. I mean, like you said, if the value is wisdom, the know-how, when, things that you haven't lived. And now you're having a pop culture or culture, whatever, of kids trying to bluff as if they knew, trying to prove themselves because that's what they have to do, prove themselves for others and establish where they're at. Um, what are they going to teach? They can't teach anything. If you're only in a group of friends, they're all the same age, living the same things at the same time. What advice can they give you, really? As opposed to having your granddad there, or your grandmother, or they would give you an option. But if they can't remember their name, then where's the value in society? And also just they even more than that, they start becoming a burden because it would be worth it if they could do things and they have such a high abstract value, let's say, not as in just doing things like physically, mechanically, but knowing how, that it would be worth it. But now we don't have that. So next generations, they're going to be struggling. At least we do have those relatable, this like you said, Spice Girls and everything. Culturally, you can at least understand each other. But now the understanding is also breaking down. You don't have the higher generation. You don't have the even these gurus. I mean, they were good, but they're not close. They're not family. They're not there. So I believe part of the longevity and even just plain health and being human and fulfilling life has to do with taking care of that part. And it's just broken down completely. And we can't get over it through even nutrients. We would live in the same house or close. I don't know if this happened to you, but we would like grandparents would also raise us. Right now, tablets with whatever's going on there is getting imprinted into kids, and it's
Yeah, Jake Paul's raising your kids or something.
yeah.
Mr. Beast is raising your kids.
Yeah, yeah. And they have to feel the tablet because it's not just that, it's a reproduction. We were the first generation, I think, to have video games and to really which is also a reproduction. It's a compensation of not being there with people and doing things. We don't really want toys. We wanted, kids want to be doing things with the parent. They want to do the same thing that the parents doing, right? And if not, well, then they get this substitution. Have you noticed how many people have dogs now or cats? I mean, almost everybody is getting one. And it isn't because what's the benefit other than an emotional? I mean,
Make up
before
for a
they,
lack of social content.
yeah.
Content, yeah.
So people are starving. They are completely starving. And that is a big, a natural thing that we would have that it's broken down. So I mean, I love that topic, and it's one of the main topics I'm like kind of like focusing on now in my current what I'm writing. But I mean, I don't know what's coming next.
Man,
Well,
it
I kind
scares
of
me.
do, but
It scares me. And I get younger people looking up to me all the time. You know, I've built this cult following here, and yeah, there's people, I'll call them kids, but now I guess they're adults that they say they've grown up on me, right? And
right.
like all through their teen years, they watch me and they're talking to me, and I'm a mentor to them. And I didn't even realize it until just like a few years ago. Like, wow, I guess I got to take this responsibility seriously. But back then and now, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, there must be such a lack of leadership here, such a lack of mentors if they're looking at me. And not to take anything away from myself, but like I'm 34 years old, man. You don't have anyone else that you could look up to? And even in my own life, there's not many people that I can look up to. There's a handful. I have a handful of people. You're only a couple years older than me too. You know, we should have like some 50, 60, 70-year-old people who are full of wisdom, full of life experience that we can gain from. And yet, even in the sort of personal development type of world, like dad online type of world, thinking like Patrick Bay Davids and guys like that, they're not even that old. You know, they're middle aged, and guys like me are looking up to them too. So it's just there's a total dearth of elderly wisdom, and I think that's only going to get worse as the role models get younger and younger. And it's super weird for me to be considered a role model by many people, and I'm not old. You know, I'm not old. What is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, what if they ask you, how does it feel to be 50 years old? What do you do then? You can't answer. I can't answer. We're not that old yet. But I think it does tie into health very, very strongly because they do have certain life experience. They could give you pretty bad advice, but they could still give you advice. But right now, they can't give you advice. They can't remember the advice. So if they can't remember the advice and they don't have their currency value, you know what's going on? It's breaking down. Health is a critical component.
It is breaking down. And your mom might be addicted to Facebook too, and she might not even be doing anything herself. Like she might not have any skills herself. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We could even do a podcast one day between even men and women roles and all these other aspects because the working and everything, it's just taking a swing. It would be controversial, surely, because of times right now, but just talking about, we're not the same and we would have different roles and what's going on now because that's also breaking down and kids aren't being even raised by parents anymore. They're being raised by tablets and tablets with and what are they going to do later on? They're not even looking towards real people. They're looking at a reproduction with they can't interact with it. There's no interaction.
A
They're just
reproduction at
taking it in.
best.
Yeah.
Filters and makeup and proper
Yeah.
lighting and editing. Real life is not edited, you know. It's yeah, it's weird. Yeah, okay. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
I think we've done well on this one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good. It was good. We really went into it, huh? Again.
So you said you're writing, you're working on a book or something?
Well, no, I'm constantly writing about these different topics, but I'm thinking about a doctoral thesis that's going to really tie in not just nutrition into behavior, but also the other functions of mythology, which is very important and we've lost it. We don't have it. It was a really important creation and tool that it doesn't mean like just lie. I mean, so not having this, another guru, but a different type of guru, a type of wisdom guru, you can look at for Joseph Campbell. Our movies are being modeled through the hero's journey, but it really isn't giving you that besides an entertainment, thing like something you can really relate to or use that much. So if we're going to the movies to get life wisdom and experience, we're in trouble, but by using that and using different methodologies, I think we can apply a lot of these things that have become fragmented, like you're saying, like we don't have grown-up people, we don't have this. We're seeing it like in these, like I mentioned, like this kind of reproduction, but it's not the real thing. So how can we make it under these conditions, like usable. That part that is missing from culture, civilization, and when it started. So I'm gonna try and tie that in. I don't know, it's gonna be an endeavor, but I because just using pure science isn't gonna get me too far. Just using philosophy isn't gonna get me far. So let's try and like put them together. Well, at least that's what I'm thinking about and starting to write about.
Well, sounds very cool, and hopefully at least I get to read it. You're promoting your coaching program with Phoenix?
Right. Yeah. It's Phoenix dash program, just nutrition, but really the lifestyle. A lot of these aspects and also the behavioral ones. The one I mentioned, for example, I use EFT and EFT, emotional freedom technique, to really using it in an aspect to not just make things easier, but to really start forgetting what you think you know. It's more of the Zen way, but using a modern form of, giving out this like the wisdom, right? And getting those aha moments. So there are different aspects of the program. One is metabolic, the one considering sleep, lifestyle, all these other things we've been talking about on the program, and also life driving experience and wisdom. So that's my program, not just nutrition.
Fantastic. And you can find that in the description. Everybody check it out. Phoenix-program.com. And the Phoenix is with an F. Fenix-program.com in the description. And remember that you can find everything that I do on my website, notusbooks.org, including the books that I've written and helped publish, and an archive of this podcast. You can download those episodes for free. And all of the social media contacts, all the Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, all those links are in the description, but you can also just find all of them on my website, notusbooks.org. And you can support on Patreon if you like. I would appreciate that. That's also in the description. You get all the podcast episodes early on Patreon, at least 1 week early, sometimes several weeks early if we're very on top of things. And it's just $1.99. You get to support us that way. We appreciate it. You get the content early, and you get our weekly Zoom meetings that I do with our other distributors in the nutrition business. We go pretty deep in those meetings into specific health problems and products, and we always do at least one case study each week. That's all on Patreon. And other than that, Yannick, I appreciate you very much. I enjoyed this very much.
Me too. Me too, Ryan. Yeah, it was really a good conversation. Let's
Appreciate
see if
everybody else. Oh,
it stirs up things in the health community and about the health gurus, a little bit controversial. I'm in.
yeah, well, I mean, a lot of things have become dogma, and yet you look at people who are talking about them and they're dying young. So we have to iron this out, and we can't be claiming to know everything about longevity when people in our industry are dying so young. So what's going on here? Worth a good
Right.
talk, and I think we had a good talk about it today. And we can talk more about it in the future. Appreciate everybody for being here. Stay healthy, my friends. Until next time.